chair of CARP Edmonton, and CARP is primarily an advocacy organization. It's a national organization with local community chapters. There's over 300,000 members across Canada and 60 chapters, so we have a strong voice in advocacy, and a strong advocacy chairperson in Susan Ng, who is well recognized in government and municipal circles in bringing forward issues related to seniors and aging. Welcome to the first day of spring, everyone. I think it arrived at 10:57 or something this morning, but the snow was pretty heavy at that time, so you might have missed it. But hang around, because you know that spring always comes eventually to Alberta. But I'm really glad to see so many out today. This is a cooperative project between Intuit, the computer tax company, plus E4C is a non-profit charity promoting helping people in poverty situations. And then CARP is also a member, so we've got the three-way promotion of this event. But right now I'd like to introduce our speaker for the afternoon, Dan Lawrence. And Dan is currently the business editor at the Edmonton Journal, but he's enjoyed many years in the newspaper business and in a variety of roles. So we'll let Dan relate these years of experience throughout the discussion and help us how to learn to focus on telling our stories and getting our messages out. So I'd like to introduce Dan.
Thank you, Bernice. As Bernice said, I've been in a variety of roles at the Journal. I was a sports columnist for about 12 years there, and 12 years before that at the Edmonton Sun. I started off at the Innisfail Province, the tiniest newspaper I've ever worked for. It's still in business, still doing well. I moved from there to the Rocky Mountain House Mountaineer, and then up to the St. Albert Gazette, it ran a little bit more like a daily than a weekly. It's now twice weekly and doing really well. In fact, the Edmonton Journal gets printed at the St. Albert Gazette plant up in St. Albert. I've been in the business for 32 years. So I've been a writer, columnist. I wrote editorials for the Journal, and now I'm the business editor. So I edit the section. I manage a very tiny staff, sadly, very tiny staff of 3 people. I do some writing myself. On the occasional weekend, I man the city desk. I was just there last weekend. So we were chasing a condo fire. And it's more like a signing. And that's probably what's most relevant to you about my job, is how do you get your news into our newspaper. But first, I just want to take the opportunity to let you know that this presents a bit of a turning of the tables for me, because you want to hear about how you get your message into our paper, but I'm here to tell you that you're our people. So you've already got some standing with us. You are, I hope you are, our subscribers. According to all the demographics, that's you. Retired people love us. And we love retired people. We love anybody who still picks up the paper. It is a fact of our business and a fact of life that smartphones are basically surgically attached to your hand, especially for the youngsters. And so we have to find a way to reach them. And it's different, completely different than the way we reach our printed product people. And it's somewhat different than the way we will reach our website people. And again, different than the way we reach our iPad people. And the Journal is part of a nationwide chain called Post Media, and we are launching something we call 2.0. It's just a relaunch of all our products, so all 4 products. It's coming in Ottawa, probably at the end of this month, maybe just into April. It will be coming across the country. We don't know when the Journal and Herald will go, but we'll probably go together. And you'll notice a difference in the newspaper itself. It's going to look different. It's going to look kind of magazine-y, with a lot of use of color and shorter bits that are easier to digest. That will still have the long reads. It'll still be good quality journalism, because that's at the heart of everything we do. But you will notice that it's different. You've already noticed that the Journal has changed. It's gotten physically smaller. We didn't want to call it smaller and shorter, but it is tighter and brighter. I think that's what we were using. So there you go. It's all in the marketing. Anyway, but the reason to bring this up is the fact that you have an in with us already. Because, again, hopefully you're our subscribers. If not, I could probably hook you up with a sales agent. So you have some currency with us. We know who you are, we know you're out there, we know you're relevant to our business, and that makes you important. So that should, in theory, make your message important, but you have to prove it. You have to get it to us. So the paper and the company has gone through some pretty profound changes, and it doesn't always look the same as it used to. But we still operate as professional journalists, and usually it's a heck of a product. I mean, look at today. The Premier told everybody at 5 o'clock last night that she had an important announcement. Everybody started speculating immediately that it was going to be a resignation. But we can't do that and just let it happen. So we had to get the machinery going, and in 6 hours, from 6 o'clock when she dropped the bombshell to 12 o'clock, which is our final deadline, we put together some pretty impressive journalism. And we can still do that. We always do that. No matter the challenges of a shrinking newsroom and shrinking revenues and shrinking size of a paper, we still manage to get that going. And it's impressive, and I'm proud to be a part of that. It is a bit funny though, when you think that we employ these highly paid professionals and we work like crazy in a professional atmosphere to get this great quality journalism out there, and then in the dark of night, we hand these papers to a 12-year-old kid to get on his bike and deliver them. It's not a perfect world. However, even in an imperfect world, we can always count on you to pick up the Journal every single day, except Sunday, which is a bit of a drag. We recently stopped Sunday delivery, and that's unfortunate, but again, it's part of what our industry is going through. But we got you for the rest, 6 days a week for the rest of the year, except for those 4 months of winter when you're in Phoenix reading the Arizona Republic. But that's okay. We still like newspaper readers. We don't care where you are. Because, to paraphrase Sally Field, you like us, you really like us. We're happy about that, and we do what we can to keep you happy. Our editors are, as I said, tuned into demographics. So whenever it makes sense, we make coverage decisions based on those numbers. But, as I also said, we're also trying to hook the youngsters. We want the 30-somethings on the iPad, and we have to serve the web, which is everybody's basic platform these days. That's where everything starts. It's the workhorse. So I'm sure everybody has seen the Journal site. We are the #1 news destination on the web in Edmonton, and we'd like to keep it that way. But you guys actually sit down with the paper, lean back, and read it, and let us know what you like about it and what you don't, and we appreciate the feedback. Keep those letters coming. And that interest does not go unnoticed in our office, nor does it go unnoticed in Toronto, where the head of Post Media is. So again, you have currency, with not only with us, but with our advertisers. So you can be a force. So when CARP executive members wonder aloud how the organization can get your message into our papers, you have to know that you're not at zero. That advocacy role isn't starting at zero with us. We know you're a relevant segment of the population, and we know you have issues. You have medical issues, financial issues, and all of those become political issues, as we know in this province. You have stories to tell. Some of them are obviously compelling, and they will, based on their news value alone, find their way into our papers and onto television and onto radio just because of what they are. Those are the easy ones. But there are others, I'm sure, that are super important to retired people that may not capture the imagination of many other segments of the population and may not immediately capture the imagination of our editors. Those are the ones that are more difficult. That's why I'm here, to let you know how to do that, to give you the secret handshake, but there isn't one. However, there are a bunch of portals into the news media now, more than ever before. Pharmacare, for instance, was a very important story, still is a very important story. It can be, if you're not intimately involved with it, a dry story. It's not necessarily sexy, it won't grab headlines on its own. So there was a sit-in. The sit-in grabbed headlines. The sit-in was the perfect photo op. Once, maybe twice. It's not something that you can go and do at the drop of a hat, but it worked, and it worked well, and there was some action, some movement. It may not be everything everybody wanted from it, but it got some attention. However, you can't go there all the time. So here are a few other ideas. First, there are opinion pages in every paper, and they are hard to fill with quality opinion. Excuse me. We have columnists who fill those pages, but they don't write every day, and they write stuff that might be relevant in Toronto or Ottawa, but might not be relevant here. And when we have a choice, we don't run those. So sometimes we don't have a choice. Sometimes columns, the edict comes from head office that you will run this. We're employees, we do it. But our focus is Edmonton, our focus is Alberta, and if there's an obvious reason not to run a Toronto-centric piece, then we've got a hole in our section. We like to run relevant, smart, well-written pieces from local people with an issue. If there's someone in CARP, the executive, the membership, who has the ability to produce something like that on a given issue, maybe probably under a strict time limit, because news is news. It's relevant now, it might not be relevant a week from now. But if you can find somebody who's capable of putting that together, maybe 750 words, maybe 500 words, as long as the point is made right off the top, your issue is obvious, your opinion of it is obvious, it's a well-reasoned argument. Perhaps you quote somebody who says this is either the best thing that's ever going to happen to us, or it's the worst thing that's ever going to happen to us. Grab somebody's attention. Write about pharmacare, but make me care about pharmacare, even though it doesn't directly affect me. A piece like that, on the right day, will find its way into our paper. And it'll be valuable. It'll be well presented. The opinion pages are in the A section, which is the best read section, because that's where the big news happens. So if you can get there, if you can find that person to write that piece, you're away to the races. On the other side of the opinion pages are the letters. And there's a good chance that some of you, maybe all of you, have written letters. Letters have changed in our business. Along with the shrinking size of newsprint, letters have had to come down. We don't often run the 500-word letter anymore. Usually it's maybe 200. So it has to be punchy. It has to make its point immediately. Don't back into it. Don't bury the lead. Give me your issue, give me your opinion on the issue immediately. Don't lose me in some flowery prose. Letters have got to be succinct. They have to be spelled impeccably. We want to see good grammar and punctuation. Don't lose the apostrophes. And don't give me your instead of your. children these days. Can't believe it. So letters are a way to do it. And if you organize a campaign, all the letters won't get in on the same day, but if you can spread it out. And I mean, chances are you're writing to your MLA anyway. At least you ought to be, to get your message across. I mean, that's grassroots. That is tried and true, and it works. And so does a letter writing campaign to the media, because the more noise you make, as long as it's intelligent noise, and as long as it's an issue that will gain some traction in the public when it's presented intelligently, then you have another voice. So that's two. Neither one of those requires a publicity stunt or a marketing manager or anything more than some coherent thought and a computer keyboard. And I'm sure most of you have those. However, if that's not working, if for whatever reason you truly believe as an organization or an executive or a membership that that's not going to do it for you, there's the event. You have the event. You save up your news, you collect your experts, and you hold a news conference. I have been to many, many news conferences. Some have been really dramatic and interesting. Others are just terrible. They don't have any news. They're a news conference in name only. There's nothing more frustrating for a person in the media, especially now with our resources so tight. We can't afford to send a reporter to any event that doesn't actually have news value anymore. So when it's a pre-planned thing and we get the news release and we're invited to the press conference at 2 o'clock on a Thursday, we're counting on news. And if we're going to devote not only a reporter, but quite likely a photographer who doubles as a videographer, because we're all crazy for video these days, then there better be some news. And how do you define that? That's the trick, I guess. But you have to know that we're looking for an issue, we're looking for a stand on an issue. So when you're having this, if it's possible for you to present not only your side, but the other side, if you can attract someone from the government you're trying to influence, let's say, if you can get an MLA or an associate minister or somebody there to present not necessarily your view of it, but the opposing view, that's perfect for us, because that gives us a leg up on the story. There's both sides of it presented in intelligent fashion in one place. And for us, that's just great, because that gives us the meat of the piece. And we take it from there, and it becomes a story in a much quicker fashion for us. The reporter on site will be tweeting about it. The photographer on site will be shooting video of it and still photos. And those will go to the web very quickly. And what happens then is you get not one day out of it, but you get two. You get the day of the event, and you get the second day in the paper. The second day story still lives on the web, and you get more bang for your buck. It's not a bad way to go. But you do have to make sure that there are basics that you follow when you're holding these events. Make sure your event starts on time. Make sure, if you can at all possible, that it ends early, or at least on time. Make sure that there are executives, CARP executives on hand with something important to say. And as I said, if you can attract somebody from the government to say something else or to support you, that's fine too. Again, the more sources, the better. And have them say it quickly. Don't bog down an event with introductions and thank yous. Just get to your news, because everybody in our business is on a tight schedule these days because we just don't have enough people anymore. We chase stories. That's what we do. It's what we're trained to do as professionals. It's what we love to do as news junkies. And the bigger the better, like yesterday. That was a grand news day. There was a terrible story from the McCann family out of the court building yesterday that they are no closer to solving the disappearance and suspected murder of their parents. That was a huge news story. And then the day got even bigger when Alison Redford stepped down. Those days will change everything in the news landscape. So if you were unfortunately calling a news conference for yesterday, it would have been the most terrible of timing. And there's no way for you to know that. You cannot possibly predict something as big as that. But there are some things you can do to not guarantee better attendance, but to hedge your bets. So you don't call a news conference, likely you don't call your news conference on the day of an important Eskimos game, Oilers game, because as strange as it sounds, it draws resources away. And the same person who covers the Oiler game might not be at your news conference, but there's a domino effect when it's a big game, and sadly the Oilers aren't playing any of these days. But they'll get better. Probably. Anyway, it is hard to tell whether A, you have a big enough story, and when to hold your news conference. But again, as soon as there's a major crime breaking out, or a disaster, or the resignation of a premier, all bets are off, everything can change. But one way to help is to make your event visual. The sit-in was very visual. It was important, it had images that were compelling, and that's why it worked. Every morning I sit in a news meeting at 10 a.m. and eventually we get around to the photo editor, or the photo assignment editor, who tells us what the best prospects for main art will be in tomorrow's paper and on the website today. Main art is the big picture on the front page. If you can come up with main art, you're gold. I have, as I said, 3 writers in my section. The one who consistently comes up with really good visuals for his stories quite often will get his story on the front page of my section when it really doesn't belong there. But it's the best of the choices because it's got a great visual. He understands that, he's understood that for ages. The other 2 of them are not quite there yet. I don't know if they've noticed that their stuff doesn't get the same kind of play always, but eventually they'll come around. And that's what organizations need to know, is that we're in a visual business. Not only are we looking for main art, we need stuff for the web right now. We need, as I said, the video, because video is seen as a way to get people to click on our website and click again and click again. And when we get around to launching that 2.0 product, we'll need video for the smartphone, and we'll need video, produced video probably, which is better than just the raw footage, for the iPad. So if you have a way, not only to get your news across, to tell us what you're upset about or happy about or concerned about, what your issue is, and you don't just give us a talking head, then you're better off. And I don't always, I have no idea what that would be for a given issue, but I keep going back to it. The sit-in it had all the ingredients. And again, whether it makes a long-term difference or not, it made a short-term splash. So I can't make a promise. I can't promise you that even if you come up with a picture that is unusual, that it'll find its way onto the front, but it'll probably find its way into the paper and on television. But is that the end goal? That's probably not the end goal. We are one of your targets, but we're not the main target. We are simply the target between you and the government, or you and the public, who can put pressure on the government. So we're the conduit. You need to reach the eyes and ears of government because they'll make the policy that makes the difference in your lives, whether it's financial, medical, or political. So it's not simply enough to reach us and get in our paper and sit on the doorstep of people who read it, the public who reads it. The real targets are the politicians. And I think, this is just my opinion, but I think to get them interested, you would do just as well to present yourself as an organization with financial and political strength. You don't want to come off as another organization with its hand out, only saying, do something for us. You have to do something for us. Make it obvious that you can do something for them, because as we saw yesterday, political parties, when they're in government, are in the business of staying in government. It is as much part of what they are and who they are as serving the people of the province or country that they rule. So, if that's the case, and if CARP is full of people who have a political voice, who have a political bent, and can muster that as a strong, unified force, and if you present yourself as volunteers, willing to back a certain campaign, or a certain party, or a certain issue or cause, then I think you present yourself as a pillar of strength rather than an organization that is simply asking for something. We at the Journal know you're out there. We know your issues, we respect your issues, and we know that you're our best customers, certainly at least for the printed product. And that gives you, as I said before, currency with us. But you don't need just currency with us. I think you need to show the government of the day that you're a force to be reckoned with. That's a relationship. I mean, I think we have a relationship that works for us, certainly, and I hope it works for you. And I think that's the kind of relationship you ought to think about developing with the governments that can make your lives a little bit easier. If that involves using the media to your advantage, rousing the public through what we write and the things that you say, so be it. There has to be something in it for us. There has to be a good story. But if there is, we'll be there. And that's probably the benefit for you. Thank you for listening. I will happily take your questions.
Just one thing, Dan.
Sure.
We're an intergenerational organization, so that 12-year-old that's delivering the paper is probably our grandson.
That's right. And he's probably really good at it, too.
Yeah, excellent. Yeah, good work ethic. Just one question on the talking about the fill pieces. How long could a piece be topical? Like if it's not going to fit into that space one day, do you keep it over for a few other days to see if it?
If you've submitted it, you mean? And we've told you that we'd like to run it, and we will let you know. If it's an op-ed piece and we've decided to run it, we rarely run it as is. It will run edited. But if we've told you it's going in, then if it gets superseded by the events of the day, like yesterday, chances are we will try to get it in the very next day, because you can't run the risk that it gets stale. We are daily newspapers, but for Sunday, and we certainly try to be on top of the news, even when it's something like that, which is possibly in the wake of the news, because issues tend to percolate a little bit before somebody will write something. But yeah, we will try to do that expeditiously. Yes?
The editorial board that you have, how does that work?
It's usually comprised of the editor-in-chief, the opinion pages editor, the person who writes the unsigned editorials, because the editorials are the voice of the newspaper, not that one person. So the person writes the editorial, but it is subject to editing by the opinion pages editor. So it's those three people for sure. There was an ed board today with the education minister, Jeff Johnson. I believe he brought an entourage, and I think we countered with maybe 5 people, including the woman who writes most of our education copy. David Staples, our City Hall columnist, was also there. So there would have been 5 or 6 journal people there. And it's usually about an hour, and it's we hold it in the boardroom. We usually ask the person who we've invited there to make an opening statement, if he or she is comfortable with that. And then it goes into question and answer, and it's always on the record, meaning whatever is said there, we are free to use in all our outlets.
If there's some comments within the editorial board, comments, is one entitled to challenge what is being said?
Oh, sure, absolutely. It's I attended a lot of those when I was writing editorials, and it was during the provincial election, the last one, and we had all the leaders in because they like the format, they like the chance to get their views straight across to us. And there was a session with Raj Sherman. It became a little bit, I don't know, heated's the wrong word, but there was some tension in the room, certainly. And at one point, he almost broke down emotionally, talking about his father. And these things have a life of their own. They're not the usual scrum that you would see at the legislature. They're more personal, they're more intimate. They quite often will lead to a better story, either for the person who wants to get that message across, or somebody caught in a moment when they've said something that is true, but they might otherwise not have wanted to say it. Conversations are like that. They can go in directions that somebody's not prepared to do if they're not standing behind a lectern with a script in front of them. Absolutely, it is give and take, and we've heard criticism from the mayor and politicians of all stripes, and it is a fair exchange of ideas. Yes?
Dan, thanks for your presentation. I found it very interesting. I'm representing the Southeast Edmonton Seniors Association at the moment. If we have a particular issue that we'd like to bring to your attention, who do we send it to at the Journal?
That would probably depend on what it is. If it's, generally speaking, you're fairly safe to send it to City Desk. We have a city editor, a new city editor, who probably didn't know what he was jumping into, but there's been nothing but breaking news since he got here 3 weeks ago. His name is Mark Ipe, and it's I-Y-P-E. He's a good guy, smart man. And if not him, then Mark Suits, S-U-I-T-S. And Suits is the assignment editor, and Ipe is the city editor. They work in tandem all day long, deciding what sort of assignments, we will cover that day, and who will do it. It really does depend. They will go through them, but where it ends up will depend on the content. If it's an education story, if it's a medical story, 2 different people, for sure. But yeah, that's not a bad place to start with those 2 gentlemen.
How far in advance would you make a presentation? Would you present information?
In advance of?
Well, something taking place.
Well, we would like a week. If you know a week ahead, that's great, because we can plan, especially when we get to planning for the iPad, planning for the mobile. There's going to be so much more coordination necessary. If you can give us a week, that's fabulous. Obviously we react to news, an hour at a time. But if there's something we can plan around for a week from today, terrific.
Okay, good. Thank you.
You bet.
So what about weekends? I worked on the TV side. What about the weekends versus the weekdays? Because what we had was less people on the weekend, but there wasn't as much news, and we always had this debate about which would get more.
Oh, absolutely. It is a bit of a gamble, but you're right. There are many events happening during the week, very few on weekends. And we struggle. We have a meeting on Wednesdays called the Look Ahead or the Features meeting, at which we try and designate maybe 4 good stories for the weekend. And it's hard. So we save up feature stories to run them on Monday, but we're looking for what we call the line story. That's the one with the big hammer headline on the front page. It has to be real news, and it's hard to find. So you could gamble and have an event on the Sunday and hope that it's newsy enough to grab that headline. And if you've planned it ahead of time and we know about it before that Wednesday meeting, we'll certainly give it a look. But we have far fewer reporters working on a weekend. When I run the desk on the weekend, we have maybe 2 on the cop desk and perhaps 2 other writers. So a staff of 4 writers working Saturdays when there's no paper, but we still have to fill the website, and Sundays when there is a paper. But again, we probably saved up 2, maybe 3 features from the week, and then those 4 reporters will be counted on to produce 2 stories apiece, and that's probably as much local content as we'll have that weekend. But yeah, it is a bit of a gamble, but sometimes it'll pay off. Yes?
What would be the latest deadline and the day you suggest for a press conference, or?
Well, I certainly wouldn't, unless you've got shocking news, I wouldn't recommend calling it or telling us about it on a Wednesday and holding it on a Thursday. That's just probably not going to be in your best interests. 2 days, 3 days, we can work with that.
Is there because TV is like a 3 o'clock cutoff or 2 o'clock?
Oh, you mean our deadline?
Yeah.
Oh, okay, yeah. If you're going for holding the event, for TV, the new newscast used to be a big deal.
I don't think it is anymore.
I know. No, it's less, much less. So everything's so immediate anyway.
Yeah.
But if you could hold something at 11 a.m., that's great. We're all over that. It gives us enough time to talk about it at the 10 o'clock meeting, plan who we're going to send if we haven't already, how we're going to approach it. That also gives that person enough time to get it done, get back to the Journal, and get something on the website, because our traffic is really high at noon. The lunch hour we often get our best numbers there. And we're in the business of getting those numbers. And if your news helps us get those numbers, you also benefit from that, because more eyeballs are on it. So 11 o'clock's a good time.
So our visual stunts have always been good for TV. We're doing the SPCA, we're going to build a chicken coop the right size so that people could sit there.
Yeah, that'll work.
That's what it's like to be a chicken.
Yeah, I know. It works.
Well, just something.
Yeah.
We're here to tell you that chickens are.
Absolutely. That's the kind of picture that's going to get played 4 columns rather than 2. You bet.
I had a second part.
Sure.
Question, if that's okay. With going so electronic and with this 2.0 coming, I represent a group called the State Family Violence Help Center, and we provide support for those who've been victimized right across the continuum, sort of 18 and up though, to the seniors. What do we put in a media kit these days? Because you don't want to be carrying all this stuff around, so.
Well, again, it depends what your aim is, but a media kit for us, it should provide some history of your organization. If there's a membership, how many people are in it? What is your core value? What is your core goal? Give us the names and contact information for your executive members. Suggest that this member would speak best on this topic. Anything like that, because we're often in a hurry to find sources, and if we get the right one first, great. If we have to go through 2 people to get to the right person, that might not make it into the paper, depending. I mean, everybody's under time crunches. Yeah, a history would be good, and your goals is imperative, and contacts are imperative. Beyond that, I suppose electronic mugshots of everyone would also be useful. Digital quality photos, we need, for reproduction in the paper, we need probably 3 megs. Online, you can live with much less, obviously. But the standard media kit from the old days, when you lugged it around, no, we don't need that anymore.
So what do you deliver the electronic on? Like, there must be some kind of spec, right? You want it on a drive? You want it on a thumb drive?
Oh, we can live with just about anything.
Okay.
Yeah,
Sure.
yeah. I've uploaded media kits from those little sticks.
Oh, yeah.
Yeah, it's the technology's there. I don't think that's an issue.
I just wonder about the right process for us to follow. Like, we know now that we're having our national vice president of advocacy in Edmonton on the 1st and 2nd of May. So she's a prominent person across Canada and within CARP circles. So we know that now. So do we let you know that, and then closer to the date we provide a focus or
Right. We have to know why she's here. The fact that she's here to speak to you is good for you. We need her to say something important or newsy for us to get involved. So just the fact that somebody important to your organization is in town doesn't do it for us. So yeah, if you could provide a focus, hopefully one that is somewhat controversial or in the news or something like that, far better chances that we'll pay attention.
So she should say the only way to deal with healthcare is assisted suicide.
Well,
That would probably be.
she shouldn't say that if she doesn't believe it.
No. If she does.
If she were to say something like that, I'm sure you'd get our attention.
She is certainly widely quoted in the news, certainly in Ottawa at the very least, but down east and Edmonton Journal.
Well, and if she comes to town with something to say, because she represents an organization that is bent on advocacy, I mean, that's her role right now, then she probably knows what she's doing and how to approach the media. If she lives in Ottawa, I'm sure she does. And again, if there's a message and it's topical, there's every chance that she'll get some attention.
So, if there's a story about her or a feature about her on Thursday and she's speaking at our meeting on Friday, that gives us the draw to get people out to our event. But would you look at it more as whatever she says on Friday is the...
Well, that would depend. If you were to make her available on the phone exclusively to a Journal reporter and she had something to say in advance of your event, that's good for you and it's good for us, right? We get an exclusive if, again, and I have to stress that if there's news value, if she just wants to talk about being an advocate and how great things are, it's not going to do it. If she's got a pointed message on something relevant to Edmonton, and we get her by ourselves, then you essentially you're quite likely to get 2 days out of the news cycle. You get the day that you give it to us, and then the day that everybody else jumps on it, if it's worth jumping on. So you also get, as you said, the added draw for your event, because people will see her in the paper and on our website.
So exclusive, is that exclusive print versus exclusive?
Well, generally exclusive is exclusive. So if you've given us an interview with her at 2 o'clock on Thursday, probably by 4 o'clock it's on our website, and then it's no longer exclusive. I mean, everybody can see it and do with it what they will. But we'll also have the head start and we'll have it in the next day's paper. If it's really big, we'll hold on to it until midnight, put it on our website on midnight, and people will only see it when they get up in the morning, and they'll see it on the web and they'll see it in our paper. That's kind of the way we treat the really huge news that we are fairly confident nobody else has.
What's happening with the neighborhood? Weren't they trying to do a sort of a neighborhood section of what's happening in Riverbend or Terwilliger at one point?
That would probably require more resources than we have these days.
Okay, they talked about it at one stage, right? I remember them talking.
Oh, it was part of the newspaper for quite a while.
Okay.
But as newsrooms shrink, so do items like that. They just have to go.
So do you guys own any of the community, the Riverbend Ragtime?
No.
And stuff?
No, that's not us. Yes.
If there was a national interest story happening here in Edmonton, who do we contact?
Again, the best place to go is the city editor or the assignment editor. That's Mark Ipe and Mark Suits. And we will be, if it's a national event, there's probably been some lead up to it, and we will be paying attention. But it's never a bad idea to phone City Desk.
And would you spell those two names?
Sure, it's IYPE, Mark Ipe, IYPE, and Mark Suits, SUITS.
Mark and Mike?
No, Mark and Mark, the Marks.
Both with a K?
Both with a K.
Oh, I get it.
We don't have any fun with that at all at the office.
Chair, are there any other questions?
The length of a piece which is maybe submitted to you in written form, is that of importance?
Oh, absolutely, it's important. Space is an issue. It's not an issue for the web, right? You can write as long as you want for the web, but having said that, we don't want to handle a story twice in two different fashions. So if you write something that's 500 words, you have a far better chance of it getting into the paper. And I'm talking about an op-ed, right? Not a letter. Letters don't give us more than 200, 250 at the absolute outset. But a 500-word op-ed, you can still make your point. I guarantee it. I did it for 15 years as a columnist. You can make your point just as well in 500 as you can in 800. In fact, there's an old saying that says, if I'd had more time, I would have written shorter. Because it's way more difficult. Way, way tougher to be that good, but it can be done. So make your point. It's 500 words. It's an op-ed. You get your issue dealt with, and it'll also find its way on the web too.
So where do you figure you guys will be in 5 years?
Excuse me?
I said, do you think you'll keep printing paper, or is that just a temporary move? Or?
Well, there was an executive with our paper who was through last year, and he got us to put our hands up. Those who thought the printed product will be around in 10 years versus 5 years, it was basically split. So I mean, we're not sure.
Sure.
We have no way. Yes?
At what level do you recommend written pieces be submitted at?
Sorry?
Like level as far as readership level, like grade 10, grade, you know.
Oh, no.
7.
Impress me with your vocabulary, right? Absolutely. Don't write down. That may be a myth that the average reader, reads at a grade 6 or 8 or whatever it is. Don't do that. We have our best read pieces are really thoughtful and intelligent and well written. Our best read pieces are usually by columnists, and columnists usually write really intelligent stuff. And so, yeah, don't dumb it down. Not a chance.
What's the best way of submitting? Is it equal as far as electronic email or?
Oh, yeah, send it to us. It's quaint when we get written letters now. We'll deal with it, but it just means we have to type them in. And again, because we've lost some support staff, that's going to fall to somebody who doesn't normally do that, which affects the flow of their workday. Absolutely, send us an email. And when you're doing that, if you're sending a letter, we need your address and your phone number, because quite often we will check to make sure that you did, in fact, write that letter on assisted suicide. because you would not believe the number of phony letters that we'll get, or unsigned. People just want to vent. And we have a place for that. It's called venting. So go ahead and do that. But don't pass it off as a letter to the editor.
Is the venting real, Dan? Is the venting?
I'm not supposed to say. Yes, it is real. It absolutely is. There are enough pissed off people out there. They will vent. Yes.
Some of it's very intelligent.
I know it can be, and some of it's terrible, and the better stuff gets in. There's a lot of stuff that doesn't make it off the floor.
So is there a book or something like that that you would suggest as a reference material? Somebody must have done this, right?
Wow. Not one that I've read.
Okay.
Yeah, I can't, there may well be, but I don't have it.
Okay. Thank you.
You bet.
I guess my only complaint about the journal was when they went to put in the answers to the crossword puzzle on the same day, because that's made me very lazy.
Yes. And my wife heard about that. My wife is the production editor at the paper, and she's heard from probably a lot of you. And that's fine. We love it. Just bring it on. I'll give you her phone number.
Well, thank you so
Thank you.
much, Dan. It's been really great, and you've given us lots to work on.
Great.
And we just have a few copies of our Zoomer magazine.
All right.
And it's our practice that we ask our speakers to name a charity of their choice, and then we give a donation to that charity.
That would be the Heart and Stroke Foundation. I usually canvass for them. So
Okay, well,
that
thank
would be the
you.
one.
Very
Great.
good.
Thank you very much.
Just a couple more points before we break for the day. I just want to let you know that according to CART's bylaws, we do not, when we have nominations for board positions, that's all done through a nomination committee prior to the annual general meeting. So we want to get people involved in being part of our board and our organization, but we like to get interest from people like right now, and have our nomination committee work with you to share some background about the board and things. And then we really would like to have more people taking part in our events. We have 4 meetings per year, but there's also opportunities for having a lot of other events, whether we form a CART cultural club and go to a movie together, or if there's a concert or a presentation that you like to attend but don't feel like going on your own. If we have opportunities to do things like that, and opportunities for social, as well as we're always looking for opinions and write-ups for advocacy issues. Dan talked about the senior sit-in, and certainly we have a poster girl from our organization that featured prominently in the picture, and our friend John McDonald from Seniors United now as well. That was helpful in getting the attention, and eventually that has led to discontinuation of the means-tested program for pharmacare. They're looking at combining 18 different programs, and we'll see what they come up with. But we always need to be vigilant to be sure that that consideration of senior circumstances are taken into consideration when they're making legislation or doing other planning other programs. So it's good to be active and to be part of that. We're nonpartisan and non-political, but we are pro-family benefits. So if we have a pension benefit or a pharmacare benefit or home care or something like that, that doesn't just benefit the 80-year-old person trying to live at home. That also affects their adult children and their grandchildren as well. So we want to make sure that things are taken into consideration that way. We're not just crotchety old people that need to complain about something. We're looking for the betterment of the community as a whole and our families as a whole. Is there anyone who has any questions or would like to comment on their issue of the day? Beth?
Denise, what is the membership of CARP?
CARP has Alberta membership of about 11,000 people. In the Edmonton area, which takes in Spruce Grove, Fort Saskatchewan, Leduc, that area there, we're about 2,600 to 3,000 members. So that's really good as far as having a strong voice, being able to go to government and say, well, we represent these many people. Our challenge is that we've got those voices who indicate their support through their membership, but we need to, it's a varied group, so we're all ages and stages of retirement or not retirement. We might be 75 or 80, but still working, and so if you're in that category, maybe you want to meet somebody else from CARP that's doing a similar thing, or we need, we have a certain group of people that like to come out to these events, and we range from 40 to 100 people at these events. It's hard to be everything to all people, so we try and pick a variety of topics, and you might come in March and September, but skip another time, so it just depends on your interests. The other challenges are, do we have afternoon meetings or evening meetings, and what area of the city? So we're looking for your input on all of those things. And Irene?
Yeah, you mentioned issues, and there are readers of the journal, so you know a bit about Sean Mahart and Huguette Herbert and Dennis Dupuis, the family members that are banned from seeing their loved ones. Dennis Dupuis, his mother is 102 years old, and he hasn't, he's banned from her room. He is able to
There, yeah.
What I, yeah, and our reaction when we hear and read these things, oh, they must have done something terrible to be banned. I'm telling you that they are ordinary people who were devastated was his mother's guardian. He had a duty to do what he did when they were trying to feed his mother, and she said, no, no, I don't want any more, no, no. So he said, please, she doesn't want any more. They turned around and charged him with assault.
Oh,
And
really?
something as ridiculous like that
Yeah.
actually gets into the court, and he had a peace bond. He signed it with the understanding that all these silly restrictions would go away. Okay, I'll go through this for a year, it just goes on.
Yeah.
Absolutely nothing. I dropped them off at the legislature today because Ross Sherman was, obviously nothing trying to be done in these circumstances, but, nothing has changed.
Mm.
The system, allows to just, okay, no, I've decided I don't want you in the room here. I don't want you visiting with your mother. And you're banned. And that's it. They write up a little notice, and if you sign and say, okay, then you can still visit for an hour. But there's no end to it.
Yeah.
You're not
It-
charged with anything.
Yeah, it's certainly an issue, and I've had phone calls myself from people in similar situations, and what we do as CARP, we're also part of other seniors association, and each one takes, has more of a specialty in those areas. CARP and SUN and Alberta Council on Aging and several other groups are part of Public Interest Alberta and the Seniors Task Force. And they have certainly taken this issue and have been bringing a lot of publicity to it. So we can't do everything, we can't be all things to all people, but we work together with other organizations so that if we have that, something come up like that, we know that someone at the Seniors Task Force or another partner is the Friends of Medicare, that they are able to bring better interest, better focus on that. And I believe that the Seniors Task Force is gathering information on making that stand.
Maybe what I'm trying to say is, there's a lot of focus on writing a personal directive. Make sure you appoint an agent. And they're going to great lengths to say, oh, you should put this in and that in and whatever. The purpose of a personal directive is to name an agent, someone who will speak on your behalf when you're not able.
Yeah.
Someone they can communicate with. What they're doing and totally ignoring that. The system, the employees are taking over your life when you go into a long-term care facility.
Mm-hmm.
And they don't
Yeah.
care that you have an agent because they don't like what the agent is suggesting.
Yeah, I know that the Seniors Task Force have involved a lawyer in their research, and are working on the legal aspects of that, because if you have designated a power of attorney or guardian, then definitely that's John?
I'd just like to throw a rose your way in that the recent initiative by PIA and the common messaging that led to the PharmaCare event, there was a letter signed by 14 different seniors organizations that went out from Public Interest Alberta to convince the government that we were serious. And those 14 organizations represented about 150,000 Alberta voters. We did get their attention, we did get a meeting, and we got results from that event. However, 2 years prior to that, in Bernice's kitchen, the beginning of that started. We started a thing called common messaging, where we tried to figure out a strategy of finding one message. We'd all get behind one issue. We would agree on text and agree on what it sounded like, and then we would all sign it and send it. And this, I think, was a shrewd and incredibly inventive idea, and Bernice's Kitchen was where it all got started about 2 years ago. So thank you very much for that, and the leadership support.
Thank you, John. It's the simple things, you know, we were talking and thinking, wow, the government is hearing 20 different messages from 20 different organizations, but really deep down we're all concerned about the same basics. So we did some work in, John was very active in that as well. We kind of worked together to pass it on to the other groups, but it really does work. We can, when we went to see the minister about the pharmacare program, we had 18 people in that room, and they were all on the same message. So that was very useful, and I'm thinking of, oh, it's so good to have the same message, and then I see what the politicians do with their common messaging, ministers not being able to say anything that's off script. So I think it can go one way or the other, can go too far.
But working together has so much value.
Yeah.
Especially when you represent numbers.
Yeah, everybody's got input and work together there. Donna?
Bernice, I belong to the Upper Retired Teachers Association, but I'm going to ask you a question about CARP, a couple actually. First of all, what does CARP stand for? That's the first one. The second one is are all of your meetings here?
Okay. That's the most asked question, is what does CARP stand for? And originally it stood for Canadian Association of Retired Persons, but our age range is expanded from to all ages, whether if you're 45, maybe you're thinking about your pension benefits, or you're thinking about the care for your elderly parents. So we've taken the age out of it, and also you don't have to be retired, because a lot of people are still working in their 70s and 80s. So just like KFC, used to be Kentucky Fried Chicken, now it's KFC, and BMO used to be the Bank of Montreal. So CARP is in with the new age, and we're going with CARP, but it certainly takes a lot of explanation every time that the topic comes up. And our next meeting will be held in this location. As I mentioned, we had met at one time we met in the auditorium at the Teachers Association. Another couple years we spent at the Old Timers Cabin. We're just trying to, it's a big city and people living all over, so location is a challenge. We thought we would try it here, and they have a fairly big space for a reasonable fee. So.
And how much are your membership fees?
Our memberships are
How many? How many?
oh, how many or how much?
How much?
How much? 1-year CARP membership is $19.95, and then if you like the Zoomer magazine, which is 9 issues a year, that's another $19.95. Or you get the combination for $34.95. And if you wish to register your membership online, there's a $5 saving there.
Is that for
Oh, yes, yes. And whenever you're signing up for your membership, make sure that you say it's Chapter 13 Edmonton. So then we get your information and can send you out the newsletters and the telephone calls to tell you about our activities, what's happening. Marion?
Bernice, I should mention to you that I saw Dan on the weekend and I asked him what he was going to be talking about today. And he said, well, a number of things. He said, but I'd really like to talk to you guys about your name. He said, you know what CARP means? Well, yeah, I do. He said, that's a terrible name. It's really terrible. From a media point of view, it's a terrible name. And it does have a negative connotation.
Yeah, especially right now there's an infestation of the carp fish in the Great Lakes, and then there's the connotation, oh, you're always carping about something, negative nagging. All of that was taken into consideration by the national organization. It had been called CARP ever since it was formed in 1984. So they've just decided to turn the lemons into lemonade and try and make it more positive. But definitely it is. It has its negative aspects. But.
I was surprised he held it back, actually.
Yeah. Okay. All right, I'd like to thank you all for coming, and please stay and have a coffee or chat with people for a while. And thank you for coming. And if you missed some of the points, our session was videotaped, and it can be found on legacy.ca. Joanne, is it?
On YouTube, Legacy TV Live, and I'll send you a link once it's uploaded.
Okay, could you?
I'll say, once we get that link, we'll post it on CARP Edmonton website.
You can put the whole video on your website as well.
Yeah, we'll
That'd
do
be a
that.
great idea.
And it'll be on our next newsletter as well. But it was great doing that.
Yeah, that was really good. I was sitting there listening to Dan so carefully and thinking, oh, I should write this down. And then I thought, well, I don't have to because there's a video. Yeah. All right, well, thank you again, and please enjoy some coffee and conversation. Of the organization, there's some cost savings in membership fees and in various consumer things, and then the community, being part of a community chapter where you can get to know like-minded people and help bring forward issues related to aging. We want to be known as a new vision of aging. We're not sitting back on rocking chairs just because we turn 55 or 65. CARP stands for Canadian Association of Retired Persons, but you don't have to be retired to be a member. We have membership with people 45 and up, as high as you can go. The number one reason for being a CART member is a voice of advocacy. With over 300,000 members, it's the largest national nonpartisan advocacy association. So if we've got more people as part of our